Hi, I'm Tom Lundquist with Bluebird Forge, and I'm back with another lesson in basic blacksmithing skills. Today, I want to talk about punching. And punching is how we get holes in steel without using a drill. The advantage to punching holes over drilling is that you can get any shape of hole you desire just by making a different shape of punch. It's also sometimes faster than finding the drill bit that you want and setting up the drill and drilling the hole, especially if the iron is already hot, because you don't want to drill in hot steel. You will ruin the drill bit. This is an example of a simple round punch, and I'll be dealing with how we make these punches in another video shortly. Here is a simple square punch. Now, I said you can get any shape of hole. This is a slot punch. And a slot punch addresses the issue of making a long, narrow hole. So if you wanted to do this with a drill, you would have to drill a succession of holes in line, and they would have to be very close together. You would then have to remove the steel between the holes and finally file to make the hole nice and clean. In the process of this, you can often get one of the holes a little bit off center, and then you've got a wobbly hole that doesn't look right. And it took 16 times as long as it would with a punch. So what I've done here is just to make a punch that the end of it is the size and shape that I want the slot, and then I'll simply drive that through the steel, and I'll have a hole in one, possibly two heats. This is a punch that's not designed to go all the way through the steel, but rather to make a depression in the surface, such as making the eye sockets if I'm making a face or an animal head. This is a tool that's related to a punch. It's called a drift. Now, I made this from a grade 8 1/2-inch bolt. You can see that the middle of it is exactly a 1/2-inch cylinder. And on one end, where the threads used to be, I've tapered it down. You can still see a little remnant of the threads there. But I forged it down a little bit, and then I ground it until it was good and slightly tapered up to the full diameter of the bolt. On the other end, there's a shorter taper going away. That way, as I drive it through the metal, once it gets past the full part and it gets to the taper, it can drop out easily. So let's take a look at how we use some of these punches. I'm first going to place the steel on the anvil, then I place the punch where I want the hole and strike it with my hammer. Making sure I'm in the same depression, I'll hit it a couple more times. Now that I have a good depression, I'm going to reheat this and finish the punch. Place the punch in the depression, and using firm blows, hammer until you can feel that the punch is stopping because of the mass of the anvil. Then you turn it over and look for the dark spot. Place your punch on the dark spot, and with a couple of crisp blows, you can drive the punch all the way through. It helps to have either a hole in your anvil or a bolster plate so that you can remove the slip. And here we have a completely punched hole just that quick. If I want to make a slot, I'm going to use the slot punch and I'm holding it in a pair of vice grips because it's too short and I don't want to get that close to the heat. I'll start by placing the punch on the steel, and I strike it, make sure it's in the same hole. Until I've got a good track established for where that hole is going to be. Now I'm going to reheat and do the actual punching. I place the reheated steel on the anvil, put the punch in the divot, and hammer it down until I can feel it bounce off the surface of the anvil. Now I'm going to turn it over and punch out the slug. And here we have the slot hole. Much faster than doing it with a drill and a file. Now another thing we can do with a slot hole is we can expand it. Suppose we need a hole that's bigger than the actual stock. I've got a piece of 3/4 inch stock I've been punching here, but suppose I wanted to put a 1 inch round hole through that stock. Obviously you can't just remove the material, but you can use a drift to move it aside. I'm going to start with this drift, and then I'll move on to this handled punch, which can also be used as a drift. I begin by placing the slot over the party hole in the anvil. I'm going to drive this drift down into it, and you can see that the sides of the hole are starting to spread. And make the hole bigger than the piece started out. I'm now placing the hole that I've already expanded over the party hole, and I put this large round punch in it, and you'll notice that I'm moving around the perimeter of the hole to support different parts of the stock around the outside of the hole. Now we can see that I've got a substantially larger hole. Once I have the hole big enough to fit over the horn of the anvil, I can knock down these corners that were left at the end of the bar. And now I have a round hole at the end of the bar, and the hole is bigger than the original bar was. And that explains how punching is accomplished. As you've seen, you can punch different sizes and shapes of holes according to what style of punch you use. You can even make a hole bigger than the stock that you started with. I hope this has been a useful video for you. Don't forget to like and share. Subscribe if you haven't already. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.